Welcome to a special edition of Crawford County Outdoors. I'm Duane Koller, and I'm happy to say we have a guest who I think is going to be pretty well known to a lot of folks around Crawford County, John Crooks. John, welcome to Crawford County Outdoors. First time
Pleased to meet you.
here.
You bet.
You've been a writer about outdoors topics with the Meadville Tribune, with the Titusville Herald, with the Game News, and
Right.
I think just about everybody around here is going to know some of your wisdom. And so
A lot of years, been writing a lot of years, right?
one of the things that I think is pretty impressive is your trophy wall here. Can you
Thank
tell
you.
us a little bit about that?
I can start out with a caribou. I shot that caribou in northern Quebec many years ago. Talk about remote, had to fly in there in a float plane.
Oh, wow.
Stayed for about 10 days. Shot 2 bulls, that was the biggest, so we got him mounted. Shot it with a rifle. I shot the elk with a bow in Colorado.
Okay.
Actually, I missed another bull. I shouldn't tell you that, but I missed another pretty nice bull. But finally shot that one at 50 yards, long shot, but I took the shot. I got the mountain lion in southern Utah. Shot him with a .44 Magnum revolver.
Wow.
With hounds.
Really interesting mount there.
Extremely cold weather. Yeah, it was cold like 0 weather, deep snow. And it was definitely a young man's hunt. But the first morning out, while we got the cougar. The moose, that's probably my greatest trophy, I'd have to say. That I shot him in northern British Columbia. And on that hunt, I passed up 16 bulls. 16
Wow.
bulls before I finally shot the biggest one, and that one was 58-inch spread.
Wow.
And that bull did make the Boone and Crockett
How about
awards
that?
book, so I was pretty proud of that.
Well, now there's some whitetails on that wall there that are pretty impressive. Tell us about that.
Yeah, there's a few there, Duane. The one on the left is the one I got last year. Not a big 10-point, but none of these bucks are what I call big, but they're nice. They're nice enough for me to put in the wall.
Now, all came from Crawford County? All came from
All came right from my property.
from your farm
here.
here? Well, I'm hoping
Yeah.
maybe you'll show us around a little bit later.
Yeah,
and-
that's what we'll do. Yeah, you get ready while we'll get out and we'll take a walk.
Now, I'd like to see some of the, maybe some of the stands that you hunt and some
Sure,
of the,
sure.
do you have trail cameras set up
I've
out
got
there?
trail cameras. I've got 3 or 4 cameras up. I probably, hopefully, got a lot of pictures. I've got probably half a dozen ladder stands out, and I've got some really big, nice located permanent stands.
Okay,
So
okay.
got a lot to show you.
Do any of these guys show up on any trail camera pictures ever?
Yes, I've got trail camera pictures. I would say of most of them.
Very good. Well, I can't wait to check that out.
Yeah. Well, let's take a walk.
Very good. Well, John, behind us is one of your stands here. It leads me to a question. Do you put the stand where the deer walk already? Do you try and get the deer to walk where you've got a good place, a safe place, or for your stand? Or how do you decide that?
Well, it's not that difficult, Duane. What I do is I put the stand where the deer are.
Okay.
And in fact, that's a good stand. I've shot a lot of nice big bucks out of it and next to it. And there's a bedding area over in this area, and a lot of times the deer will cross the road to feed over there at night, and I get them a lot in the morning going back and forth. So
I'm not sure if our viewers can hear, but there's some traffic on the road, so the road isn't too far away.
no, the road's not far, but the deer, they're not a bit afraid to cross it.
And so crops and things, if they're planted nearby, they're going to come to the woods in the daytime and go to the crops and things at night. Is that
Usually, yeah.
okay?
In the evening, and the deer are going that way. Of course, in rifle season, that's a rifle stand. They're going every which way. Nothing to see 20, 30 deer or more in the morning here.
Now this stand in particular, you've got windows and a door and so on, so you're going to be sort of contained there. Is that going to help keep your scent from getting out so the deer aren't going to? Okay.
I go in there for the day. I take my coffee with me, and I'm there all day when I'm there. And I keep the windows cracked just enough to get the gun or the bow out.
So the fact of not having the wind blowing on you, deer's got a very strong sense of smell, right? He's going to smell you a lot farther away.
I try to play the wind. Hopefully I get him coming the right way, but you can't always do it.
Now we're standing right on an area that looks like a pretty good trail, and I'm seeing a lot of nuts and things. It looks like maybe old hickory nuts and things like that.
Nuts, right.
Are those also going to help you figure out where's a good spot to put your stand, where there might be a food source?
Especially in archery season.
Okay.
Early season, archery season, I try to hunt the food sources. And the next stand we're going to look at is just full of acorns. and that'll be where I'll be hunting. Probably the first part of the season, right on the acorns.
Now you said that early in the season you want to go that way. In the middle of the season, deer's got something else on his mind. Mr. Buck's got something else on mind, right?
Exactly. Then I go to the scrapes. Then I start hunting the rut sign, and that's where I probably kill most of my bucks is on the scrapes.
So if I'm thinking about positioning a stand, I probably need to be thinking about, am I hunting in the rut? Am I going to hunt this stand in rifle season? Or?
Timing is everything, right?
Okay.
With archery, timing is, you got to be where the deer are. If you're on a scrape early and the bucks aren't, well, you may as well stay home.
Well, you don't have a lot, in rifle season, you can still get them 100 and something yards away, but in archery season, you don't have an option.
I like them 10 to 30 yards.
Yeah.
So.
Well, very good. Now, John, that's something you don't see every day. We got a big hemlock tree behind us there that's quite a lot of bees coming and going from. What's going on there?
Well, I tell you, that's the old-fashioned bee tree, and that's something you don't see a whole lot now because honeybees are really getting pretty scarce with that blight or disease that's going on. So I would say that's probably been there 5 years, and every time I come by it, I stop to visit them, and he's like, today it's busy. It's busy.
Now you decide. Well, I would assume that they're making honey in there.
Absolutely.
That's a little. That's a little homestead for the bees up there. And
I'm actually very surprised the bear hasn't got up there yet and tried to get it out, because that's probably big enough for him to get his paw in there and start scraping it out. But,
well, not to change the subject, but over your left shoulder, I see a different kind of stand that you've got here. Now, tell us about that one.
Well, that's one of my many archery stands. As I get a little older, I've gone to the two-man ladder stands, which I like. They're big, they're roomy, and they're safe. And so that's one of my stands. I shot a nice big 8-point there a couple years ago.
Now, the stand that you had before with the sides and the windows and whatever, that's going to help control your scent. You're not going to have the benefit of that up here.
Exactly.
But you are going to have a little more free. You're going to be able to.
Right. I'm going to be able to shoot the crossbow or the the recurve, whatever I bring that day. But that's the biggest thing with bow hunting is your scent control.
Now let me ask you, why did you put the stand where you put it there? Now, let me make a guess here. It looks to me like it's facing to the west, and most of the time around here the wind comes out of the west. Is that part of it?
It's sort of facing southwest.
Southwest, okay.
And a lot of my deer will be coming out of the big ravine, and they'll be coming up through here out to food. And it's just sort of centrally located in this area I call the bowl.
Okay.
And they'll come up here from the north, they'll come in, and everything just tends to mill around in this middle.
Now, this area is maybe a little bit thicker than the area we stopped in a few minutes. Does that have anything to do with why they're going to be more stand still? You're not saying stand still, but they're going to be milling around in an area that's thicker?
Right.
They don't feel as exposed there? Is that?
That makes sense. And I try to get in always from the east, get in there in the morning and slip up, and hopefully nothing sees me and spooks. But that's been a good stand. I see a lot of deer out of it. So.
Very good. Interesting. Well, John, I see a couple interesting things here. One, the decoy. Maybe we'll talk about that in a second. But by your elbow there, what's that on the ground?
Well, what we've got here is we've got a scrape, and this will be one of probably my favorite place to hunt now is scrapes. Most of the bucks I've got in the house on the wall, I've shot off scrapes.
Why is it there? What is it?
This is a scrape is. The best way to describe it is it's what a fire hydrant is to a dog.
Okay.
It's an attractant. The bucks come, they take their paws, their hooves, and they always knock the leaves out on the ground. Then they take their preorbital glands on their eyes, and they'll rub their scent on all these branches. And then they normally urinate down their metatarsal glands. So a scrape is essentially a big scent post. Every buck, I've got a camera on this one now, and it won't surprise me if I don't get 10 to 15, 20 different bucks using this scrape.
So now they're going to be not too far from now. They're going to be in a very aggressive mode when it comes to be breeding season, and so that's almost like a challenge. Hey, this is my territory, and now the other guy's saying, no, I'm taking over, and so then at some point in time we'll see them locking heads.
Exactly. And actually what I do is I try to expedite this and agitate them. I come in here with rakes different times. I work the scrape up really big, and I take buck urine, not necessarily any particular brand, just whatever I happen to buy.
Okay.
And I usually start like this, and I'll just put a few drops in that and just kind of give that guy something to think about when he comes back. He'll probably be back within the week.
Okay.
And I'd be willing to guess this will be twice that size.
So in my mind, I'm thinking we don't want the deer to know I'm around here, so we don't want to disturb anything or whatever. You're saying the opposite.
Yeah.
You want that to disturb, and you want to have.
I want to agitate him.
Okay. Okay.
He's going to be upset. He wants to know who the strange buck is. And these are extremely territorial. These bucks come, they fight. A lot of times you'll see where the place is tore up where they're fighting. And it's an excellent place to use a decoy, as well as, you'll see I have a ground blind up over there.
So now this decoy, again, I mean, it looks like a deer and so on, but you'd think a deer could tell that that's, a statue, that it's not a real deer, but it doesn't disturb him, it doesn't scare him away.
Sometimes certain bucks will look at it and they're gone. But I think, in my experience, that most of the bucks that I see, they love it. I call her Maybelle, and I take Maybelle out and set her up. Now the does oftentimes will walk around it and they don't like it. But you got to figure the bucks in the rut, late October, early November, they're looking for a doe, period. They're looking for a doe, and when they pop up over that ravine, come down through the woods and they see her, all eyes are off the blind and me and the blind over there, right to her.
Well, let's take a walk over that blind. I want to see what it looks like from over there.
Sounds good.
Talk about a ground blind, if you would, for a second, as opposed to, the other ones we've seen up to this point have been in trees, either a ladder or a closed-in, a little room. The ground blind, tell us about that.
There's a lot of pros and cons to the ground blind. Probably the biggest thing against the ground blind is the scent factor. Most of the time I do hunt probably 12, 15 feet up on a tree. But now and then I'll make sure it's downwind. This is west, east, I'm downwind of that scrape.
Okay.
So I know when I have a west wind or a southwest wind, I'm safe to come in from the east out of the field and get in that ground blind.
Okay.
And I'm counting on Maybelle, the decoy, to keep the buck occupied.
Get their attention.
While I can get him shot with an arrow.
Now, the blind itself, is that going to contain your scent a little bit, as opposed to just being out in the open?
Somewhat, but on the other hand, if the buck comes around back of the blind, then I could be in trouble. But that's where my scent-free clothes come in.
Okay. And
the soap that I always shower in the morning is special soap.
You wash the clothes in the scent-free wash and so on.
And I'm meticulous about hanging them on the clothesline every afternoon to dry.
Okay.
It's all about scent control. If they smell you, it's party's over.
Now that blind has kind of a reddish and a goldish cast to it, and in this woods there's not a lot of leafy stuff that's going to be like if it's something that wasn't green is going to be way out of place.
Right.
So you're thinking when archery season's here, leaves are going to be coming down and they are going to be brown and gold and whatever. So so you're going for the colors that are going to be at that time.
Color, and keep in mind they're colorblind.
Okay. Okay.
What a deer sees is black and white.
I want to ask you about camouflage in general. Now, I'm wearing a generic sweatshirt that I got from, whatever hunting store.
Right.
And does it make any difference? I mean, does it, the brand you pick or the pattern that's on there, and, it has too much green, doesn't have enough green, has too much brown, what do you think?
Good question. A lot of it's just up to the guy using it. It makes you feel good. I like to go and I like to be camo. And it does hide you, sure it does. Versus if you was sitting in there in a white t-shirt or an orange t-shirt.
So a big part of it that I've heard before anyways is just want to break up your, you want to break up your silhouette a little bit. My arm's sticking out.
Silhouette.
And I know for myself, when I'm looking for a deer, I'm looking for its leg or its tail or its ear, that doesn't look like a tree branch, And probably the same for when they see something that looks like an arm or a hand or whatever, if it's broken up a little bit by this, the pattern on that, maybe that helps you.
The biggest thing that'll give you away is, number one, scent and or movement. You move, especially in the ground blind, he's probably got you. But that's why the ground blind is black inside, and when I'm inside, I'll zip that up so he can't see through it. I've had a lot of nice big bucks around this that I've let go, and
They didn't know you were
No,
there?
they don't know I'm there.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, so it's a good alternative, especially on a rainy day. If you don't want to get wet, you get in there, you're dry.
So we've talked a little bit about equipment so far on our walk here. You got a backpack on. What other things what other magic tricks do you have in there, John, you can teach us about here?
Sometimes I carry 2 backpacks, but I've got a lot of goodies in here. Things I use, like when I'm in there, I'll unzip it and lay it down. Probably the thing I use most often is my rangefinder.
Okay.
And the way this works is it's very simple. I'll get in the blind, I'll range the scrapes, I'll know exactly how far they are from the blind. Most of the people that are missing bucks either have buck fever or they have no idea how far the buck is they're shooting at.
Okay.
I'm sure they can hit the target all day at 20 and 30 yards. But now all of a sudden that buck steps out and they got buck fever. They shoot and they shoot over it or under it. So what I do, the first thing I do when I get in the ground blind or a tree stand is I range all the big trees around me in a circle.
So you know if the deer comes in front of that tree, you know if he goes behind that tree, he's X number of yards.
Exactly. Like right now, that decoy is 22 yards.
Okay.
So I remember that. I know I can put my 20-yard pin on that buck and I'll get him.
So maybe from 10 to 15 yards doesn't make a whole lot of difference on your arrow flight, but from 20 to 30 makes a big difference, right?
That's the big difference. The further away, the more it drops, and it drops faster. And you'll notice I've got that decoy's head facing to the left. There's a reason for that.
Okay.
When the buck comes to a doe decoy, he always comes to the rear end of the doe. Sometimes I have little horns that go on that. I make him a little spike sometimes. In that case, I would turn that deer around and have him facing to the right, because that buck is going to come and he's going to come to the head end and he's going to start sparring with what he thinks is another buck.
Okay.
So if you happen to set up wrong, you're not going to get the broadside shot on the buck. So it's very important which way you face it.
So you know the territory well enough to know that the deer's generally going to come in.
Yeah.
I guess that would be from the northwest.
Right.
I guess is going to come in
southwest.
into this.
I know pretty much they're going to bed down in the big ravine. They're coming up over in the evening.
They're going to be moving this way.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they run this ridge. They're looking for does late October, November, and they're running. I shot a real nice 8-point up here at the next stand several years ago over the decoy.
Okay.
He come in, saw it, and he just locked up on it, and that was it. Next thing he knew, why I had him.
So you know, always in my mind, I'm thinking something that's not natural, something that doesn't belong there. It's going to scare him away. So it's out of place, and it's going to scare him away. And maybe that happens. You say.
Sometimes certain bucks will spook, and the next buck he can't get to it fast enough. So that's how it works.
Very interesting. Well, John, another stand here you put together. I'm impressed with the, you can get in, it looks pretty comfortable. You got a chair in there with a swivel. And now let me ask you about the windows. The windows look like they're, if I'm looking out the window and I'm standing up in my kitchen, that window's going to be too low. But if I'm sitting down and I'm going to be shooting out of it, that looks like it's just about right.
They're perfect. I'm meticulous about my windows and my chair height. I've seen stands where the window's high and you have to stand up to look out, where these, you sit on the chair on these and you're perfect.
Now those windows, you'll slide them up when you're in there, keep them closed, or you'll keep them open while you're in there?
I slide them up. That way if I see something, I can either shoot with a crossbow or the rifle or handgun.
So now this window's more wide than it is tall. I mean, was that on purpose to accommodate your crossbow?
Exactly, for my crossbow, yeah.
Now, do you keep the crossbow inside and rest on something, or do you stick it all the way through?
These carpeted shells are just perfect for the crossbow.
Okay.
And I can lean back. And I think I've been known to take a snooze now and then too. With rifle hunting, just lean back and get too comfortable and have the heater on. But
now, John, as we were walking over here, you were telling me a story. You've got in your hand a grunt call. So we talked a little bit before about some of the scents that might attract the deer to come by. Well, tell us about the calls. You know, maybe give us call 101 here.
Right, I'll give you call 101 here. But I do anything that I think will bring that buck in. I rattle. I didn't bring my rattling horns today.
Which is going to simulate two deer fighting, so he's going to come and check it out.
Most times they're going to come. Normally, the way I use a grunt call is I normally see the buck, and if he's not coming into the scrape or whatever, and then I'll get the grunt call up and just see what I can do with him. Here, I'll make a few grunts. The whole time I'm watching his reaction.
Okay.
99% of the time he'll stop, and he'll cock his ear up, and then that tells me, yeah.
He heard it,
but you got to be careful with your movement coming up. Don't move much. A lot of times he'll turn and wag his tail and go the other way, but the next buck might come running right in and give you your shot. So.
Now in turkey season, you know, I've learned a little bit. I still have a lot more to learn about that. But one kind of call is more calming. Everything's okay. You know,
right.
Another call might be one to, hey, big boy, I'm ready for some attention here. You know,
right.
Are there language things? Are there things you can say with that call?
Yeah, and you got to watch what you do. You know, you don't dare do the snort. Snort, of course, is danger. You've got to know the calls.
That's like a, you know, get out. You know, something's wrong here. You know,
right. I've got another call here that is more of a calming call, and I use it some. I don't use it a whole lot. There you go. I'll give that to you. This is the old bleat and heat call, but these are good, especially if you want to bring does in, or if you're hunting a scrape and maybe you see a buck, he'll think a doe's there. Sort of a bleat is everything is okay.
So that thing is making the sound almost like a, what's the word, an accordion.
Yeah, of a doe, yeah. And by now you've got him thinking.
Okay.
You've got him thinking that maybe I better go over and check this scrape out.
Okay.
And anything's worth a try, especially when they're going the other way.
Now you told me as we were walking up to this one that you used a call on a deer right out of this exact stand.
Yes.
How'd that work? How'd that happen?
One of the nicest 8 points I've ever shot. I was hunting this late in November here. Well, it'd be mid-November several years ago, and I knew I had a doe in heat down here because I'd seen several bucks go in down here. Later in the morning, she came running up with 4 bucks after.
Oh, for heaven's sakes!
And the last buck was the big buck that I'd been hunting the whole season. So I had my crossbow loaded there, ready, and I give 2 or 3 sharp grunts on that call, and it stopped him. I knew I couldn't hit him as fast as he was running. He stopped broadside and just looked up, and about the time he looked up, why, I slapped the trigger, and that was the end of the buck. He went down into the ravine and fell after about 50 yards. So it's one of them things. Things happen fast. So
as you're aiming at the buck with your crossbow, do you have to factor in the height, the fact that now we looked before a ground blind, now we're in an elevated blind, and I don't know, the ground kind of slopes away here, you know,
right.
Off to my right where you were shooting. Now, do you have to factor in, I've got to aim a little higher because my arrow's going to pass down through?
No, because I sight my my crossbows in level, but I also bring them up here and shoot them from these stands.
So you practice right out of the exact stand? Okay.
To make sure.
Okay.
I'll put one of my deer decoys up, and as fast as the crossbows are at, say, 20 yards, no, you're good. Put it right on it and let him have it.
Very good.
Yeah.
I like the story. Well, John, in about 10 seconds, I picked up a nice big fat handful of acorns here. Brown ones, green ones, big ones, small ones. Does it make any difference to the deer? They like them all?
They love them all. And I'm very lucky to have that ladder stand within just yards of these acorns. They love acorns, and it's a great nutritious food for them all year round. So.
Now, one of the things I've heard said before is if you have a white oak, that they like that even more than a red oak, but they'll take any acorn.
They'll take any acorn, right?
Okay. A natural food source versus one of the chemical blocks or whatever that you put out, that's going to be an attractant for a deer?
Right, and of course these are legal. Deer love them, and if you're lucky enough to have them next to your stand, if not, that's the first thing you want to do is get a stand up near acorns.
Near an oak tree?
Yeah, get it up, and that's the best stand there is for early season.
Okay.
Before the scrapes open up, is hunt acorns, white oak or red oak, either any acorns.
Well, I don't want to take the deer's food away, so I'll put these back, but you think of this spot as an area that you've seen some scrapes before, and so you're going to show us a little bit how you...
This is what I call an old breeding scrape. Every year I see dozens and dozens of bucks here at this scrape. This is like an X on a piece of paper.
Okay.
Every buck coming up over the haw, coming from the south, the east, the west, crisscrosses here. I know because I sit here a lot of times all day long. And I know what's going on here 24/7. I've got 2 different cameras watching this scrape already today. So what I'm going to do here today is I'm basically going to open this scrape up early. I'm going to agitate the buck. I'm going to work this scrape, put some buck scent on it, and I think that's going to help me come deer season. You can see the overhead limb where he's got the
okay.
The pine needles all knocked off from last year. In a typical year, there's probably 4 to 5 scrapes in the circle all the way around this tree.
Same buck doing all of that, or?
No, there could be 8, 10, 12 bucks.
And one buck doesn't mind using another scrape that's already there, or he might make his own?
They normally come by themselves. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Quite a rivalry here, so I'll show you what I do. It doesn't take a lot of effort. You want to make it look like the buck did it. I normally bring it to a point at one end. That's all it takes. I take the other handle of my broke-off rake and I put some rubs in there. And I make a few deer tracks. You can make it look just like a buck was in there.
You're making a nice wide V.
Yeah, making a wide V.
Hey, speaking of that for a second, when a buck's walking, is those 2 pieces of his hoof where the V points, he's walking, let's see.
The way the V points is the way he's going.
Okay. I was trying to figure out how to say that. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to put a little of that urine on there.
So that's actual urine that they've collected from some deer someplace.
Right. Right now I'm using buck urine. Another week or 2 I'll start with doe urine. Then later when the rut starts I'll go with doe and estrus.
All right, now here's how do you know when the rut starts? I mean, is there some way to tell by the way the deer are acting?
You'll
or by
know.
The weather?
It's just like a feeding frenzy.
Okay.
The bucks are on the go 24 hours a day. They're running, they're searching, they're looking for does. And a stand like that over scrapes like this is a good place to be when that happens.
So you're seeing them, you're seeing their activity change.
You're actually seeing deer.
Okay.
A lot of these bucks early are nocturnal and you won't see them. But just like the nice 10-point I shot out of that stand last year, I never saw him until one day I got a picture of him, and the next day I killed him. I moved in on that stand and I killed him right there. So.
Now you've got a stand here that's a little less than 20 yards that way, and another one that's about the same distance the other way.
They're both about 18 yards from the stand.
In the case the wind's blowing one way or the other way, that's why you position them there? Okay.
I normally hunt that on a west wind because I always want to be downwind of what I'm hunting, whether it's acorns or a scrape. So if I get a wind out of the east, I'll come in up above, keep my scent, keep this scent clear, and I'll set on that stand on the east wind while the buck won't smell me.
So the sneaking in from the back, I mean, there's something to that. You want to come in.
Oh yeah, you never want to walk through where
you think the deer activity is going to be
there. Right, you got to keep clean. You got to keep your scent out of there.
Okay.
But I guarantee you that within a week, week and a half, this will be worked again, and probably these 3 or 4 other scrapes will be open.
One more question about the tracks. When I see a track, and it's, I don't know, maybe the size of my fingers like this, when I see one that's much bigger, the bigger deer is going to make a bigger track, right? I mean,
sure.
It's going to be deeper if he's heavier. I mean, if it's a buck and it's...
Right. It's probably going to be a buck, but there's some awful big does.
And plus, if it was soft, maybe it made it when it was soft a couple days ago in a rainstorm or whatever, so you can't go 100% by that, but generally a bigger, deeper track might
usually a buck.
Got to get your attention.
Right.
Okay.
And again, what's nice about this is every deer that works that scrape, I'll walk by maybe and I'll say, well, the scrape was hit. Then I'll go over and I'll pull a disc. Ah, it was that big 8-point. Well, I better camp out here a while. So it works.
Interesting.
It's the way I do it, and it works.
Interesting. Well, John, we're just a real short ways from the scrape that you were showing us and the oak tree with the acorns all over the place, but now we're in a food plot, and you put this here.
Right.
Why here? And I want to ask you about the different plants and so on that are involved, but and also the process of making this happen. How does this happen?
This all began probably back in, I'm going to say, July. Of course, I brought my tractor back and a rototiller, plowed everything up, went to a Tractor Supply, and just about bought them out of seed, different kinds, experimenting. And me and a buddy spent an afternoon putting it in. And as far as why, it's a food attractant to attract deer.
Okay.
Essentially, you're trying to pull the deer from your buddy's property or the neighbor's property. Whoever has the best food has the deer.
Now, you said you had multiple things that were different seeds you put in. Now, is that going to, bear with me here, am I going to try and have things come ready to be eaten at different times throughout the late summer and the fall and the first part of the winter? Is that how that's going to work?
That's essentially the way I set this one up.
Okay.
I've got different kinds of seeds. As you can see, I've got a lot of red and white clover here, and that's ready to go right now. You can see the way this is tracked up. The deer are already in it.
Now, what is it about a clover that a deer likes? Is it the flavor of it? Is there some nutrient in there?
It. Clover is that and alfalfa, two of the things they like the best.
Okay.
I've got some brassicas in here that'll be coming on a little bit later. I've got turnips. Once the frost hits those, why they'll even be more attractive to the deer.
Okay.
So hopefully this will work and maybe bring a few extra bucks in here.
So a food plot is something that you want to keep the deer coming around.
Sure.
All the time. So this is they're comfortable coming back to this spot, and again, it's just a few yards from your other stands.
Just like people, we go to the best restaurants.
Okay.
If you like a restaurant, you go there. If they like eating here in the evening, that's great. So I do my best to attract them.
So you want the deer saying, "Hey, there's a place over there behind John's house. It's a pretty good place to go and get something to eat."
That's right. And if you can get the does and the fawns here, you got it when the rut comes, because whoever has the does has the bucks.
Okay.
It's simple.
In this, now, did you have to cut trees down, or was this was a field before you started?
Field,
this was a field.
Yeah,
okay.
and sometimes I put even food plots over there, but I move them around a little bit. So
are those kind of things that you got to replant them each year, or do they some of those things come back?
Yeah, the clover will come up next year.
Okay.
Yeah, the clover will come up, and if that's the case, I'll probably just start cutting this off. I do have weeds in it, and I'll probably maybe make another food plot further up, and maybe I'll kill the weeds on that one first. So.
Now, is there any magic to? It needs to be a half an acre. It needs to be a square, 100-yard square.
No,
is there any magic to that?
The biggest thing is you got to be able to shoot it with your bow.
Okay.
You know, if you're in the middle.
So if I make a strip a quarter mile long,
yeah,
it might not work as well.
Now here, again, here's the east. The sun's going down on the west. If I do hang a stand here, it'll be somewhere along here.
Okay.
But I think I have it covered by my two stands down below.
Okay.
But if I see they're getting around me and getting in here, then I'll hang a stand here on the east side and hunt it on the right night with a west wind.
Let me ask you about weather. If it's maybe there's a storm coming in, and we've seen on the forecast, the deer probably are going to know that from. Do they eat more when there's a storm coming through? I've heard, and that's confusing to me.
Typically, yes.
Okay.
Typically, they know, and many a night I see it's going to storm. I get out. I get into it. I don't mind getting wet. I have good rain gear, Gore-Tex, and.
So before the storm comes in, that might be a good time.
Exactly, right.
Are there any other, like, phases of the moon or things like that you factor into your
moon phases? Yeah, it's normally on a full moon. Deer tend to come out later in the evening. Usually on a full moon, the evening hunts aren't as good. It's just a little tougher. I mean, there's the exceptions. I'm not saying you won't kill a big buck on a moonlight evening, but for the most part, why the full moon isn't as good in the evening.
Okay. But what is good is having a food plot near where you want to hunt.
That's right. Don't hurt. It takes a little bit of work, and they're fun putting in. So I do it.
Now, did you scatter the seed by hand? Was there some magic the way you
had a seeder. You walk through it and just went through
little handheld thing, and it kind of broadcasts the seeds around.
Yeah, broadcast. Very simple.
Okay.
Little fertilizer, a little lime, and there's what you got. Deer food.
Well, thanks for showing us the all your secret spots here, and some of the tricks to help. I think a lot of our viewers are going to enjoy this.
Yeah, well, I hope so. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens here, but hopefully that'll get somebody going and help them to get a buck.
Well, John, you got a pretty interesting. Now that doesn't look like a tree stand. That looks like something different to me.
That's right. Well, that's my home away from home, I guess. Little rustic trapper's cabin, I call it. I tried to make it look like a 1700 era cabin. And now we have a lot of fun back here. We come back in the summer and have picnics, cookouts. A lot of times we come down here in the winter and maybe cook hot dogs over the fireplace inside.
Okay.
And it's also a nice place when I'm hunting down here. If I get caught in the storm, why it's a place to run into and warm up and dry off.
Get out of the rain a little bit?
Yeah.
Well, we've been talking about deer hunting specifically and about archery hunting kind of in general. If I'm going to get started, what gear do I need? I mean, how do I pick do I need a crossbow? Do I need a bow? How do I figure that out?
That's a tough question. Your best thing is to go to one of the reputable dealers versus a retail store. Go sit down, tell them what you want to do. For the most part, you need a bow. You've got to decide whether you want compound or recurve or crossbow. And from there, once you do that, that dealer will work with you.
One question about that. Years ago, you had to have doctor's excuse before you're allowed to use a crossbow. Now that's changed. That's changed in recent years.
That's gone with the wind.
And that's a good. To me, that's a good thing. More people can get involved in the sport then.
Exactly. Anybody that wants to hunt with a crossbow, just buy it. So, but that dealer can actually have you shooting the bow in a matter of a half hour. He'll have it set up and have you shooting it in his shop.
Okay.
And you're going to know exactly what you want, how to work it, whether or not you want a scope. And that would be my best suggestion.
Now I've tried the crossbow, shooting the target in the yard, and I can hit things pretty well with that. So I'm going to give it a try this year. And with all the advice you've given me here, hopefully that'll give me some better chances, anyways.
Hopefully it'll help you out. Yeah.
Very good.
I covered a lot of stuff, but hopefully it'll help you or somebody else out. So.
Well, there's one more interesting thing I want to take a look at here, down a little further down your lot here. So I want to check out that Indian teepee next door here.
Well, let's walk over and check it out.
Well, John, we're out of the woods here now, and something real interesting now. I'm seeing a teepee. What is the story with that?
Well, why not, I guess. I like Native American history.
Okay.
I know the Indians lived here. I find a lot of arrowheads around here. And I'm a bow hunter, and they were bow hunters, and I'm just intrigued by how they hunted, how they lived, and how they even survived. And so I guess as a part of that, all why I've built the teepees and the totem pole and tried to recreate what a Plains Indian, how he would live. So
now the teepee itself actually is probably a pretty simple but a pretty utilitarian design. I mean, it's something that could be moved if,
Right. They would live with and follow the game. I mean, you can put them up, as I understand it from my reading, why the women are the ones that actually built the teepees, cut the poles. These I made with usually 8 to 10 different poles. And I should actually have canvas. Canvas is pretty expensive, so I use what I can get, tarps or whatever. But they look pretty good overall, I think.
But in a little cluster like this, and with the fireplace in the middle, and
right.
Might have been the way a small village might have been.
Right. Oh, exactly. Yeah.
150, 200 and plus years ago.
Right.
Probably, maybe even in the same area.
And I get a lot of people stop at the house and want to come back and look at them, or they drive by and they stop and they look and they're taking pictures, or they give me the thumbs up. So I guess the public likes them. So.
Now, what's the story with the totem pole back in the background?
Totem pole, yeah, I don't know. Again, that, from what I understand, that was something that the Indians in Washington and the Pacific Northwest pretty much had built. I don't understand what all it represents, but I know they painted different things on there that was current to their tribe. So I thought, well, I think I'll put one here. So I built one, and the wife come down and said, "What do you build?" And I said, "A totem pole." And I got a bunch of paint, and that's what I wound up with.
So the Indians were bow hunters, right?
Exactly, as are we, yep.
So what the heck, that makes some sense.
Yeah.
Well, John, I sure appreciate the lessons today and showing us around, and very impressed with your spot here, and thank you very much for the teaching.
You bet. Anytime.
John Crooks, your outdoor writing, I've enjoyed that over the years now.
Thank you.
Thanks, it's great to get to meet you in person and hear some of your stories and see some of the things right up close and personal.
Sure.
So thanks to you, and especially thanks to the folks at home for joining us on Crawford County Outdoors, and we'll talk to you next time.